So you've known the Clintons since at least 92. Bill tried to get you to...
Right.
What job was he offering you?
Well, it was, David Wilhelm was a friend of mine. I was a campaign manager, and it was communications director. And
before Stephanopoulos?
well, that was the thing. You see, I got called. This is apropos to the cause that brings us together, because David called and offered me that job, and I really was so thrilled with the offer, because I thought this is what I've always wanted to do. And then I started thinking about it, and I started thinking about Susan and my kids and my daughter, who was quite ill at the time, and I realized that this would basically destroy my family if I'd done enough damage to my family just doing the politics I was doing.
Was this during the campaign, or?
It was in the spring after the nomination seemed secure.
I see.
And I called David back and I said, I can't do it. And I said, so what are you going to do? He said, well, I guess we'll have to give the job to George. And so I think it worked out best for everybody, actually. For Bill Clinton, because George was great, and I have the highest, I think George is a great guy. I have a high regard for him. And it was definitely the right decision for me. And it was actually, it was a big moment in my life, because I always had I was very ambitious, and I realized that there were actually things more important to me than that, and so it was an important moment.
Yeah, making the counterintuitive decision usually is the right one.
Yeah.
I mean, in that same period, or 4 years later, I'd covered Clinton for 4.5 years. I was sort of considered the Clinton expert. Yeah. And that's when I decided to bail out and move to Green Bay and do the Lombardi book. And that's what gave me the freedom for the rest of my career.
And now you're the Madison bureau chief of the Washington Post.
I don't know where I am.
So this is off the record. Don't tell where he's at.
They all see me at Collectivo or somewhere.
You're a local celebrity. I have to say, I would be remiss if I didn't say that, and I mean this, I say this behind your back, so it's really an honor to be with you. I think your work is really extraordinary, and as an old journalist and as someone who loves history, I'm just a huge fan of what you do. So when they told me that you were going to sit with me tonight, I was thrilled to be here, so I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, so am I. So am I. Just to go back to the Clintons for a minute, so you didn't work for Bill, but at one point you did work for Hillary.
I did in 2000. I worked for her on her Senate campaign. Yeah, and beyond that, Hillary Clinton was in many ways the patron saint of Cure. She was the first speaker at our first fundraiser in Chicago.
And how did that happen?
Well, I knew her. I knew her through my relationship with the Clintons, and I made the request, and she came, and she not only came and spoke, but she asked to go to a epilepsy clinic during the day, and she spent a lot of time there. When she spoke, it was very, very moving, because she talked about looking at an EEG and of a child who was having a seizure, and she talked about seeing those lines get very violent and black, and thinking about what that child must have been feeling when that was going on. And she was incredibly powerful. And then she worked with Susan and Cure to have the first White House conference with the NIH on curing epilepsy. And she's been at 2 other events for Cure. So, that's what made the 2008 campaign,
so
difficult.
Sure.
Difficult. But I was so close to Obama. I believed in him. I had been asked to be a part of her campaign as well. And I also had worked for almost everybody else who was running. So, but I really felt so much deeply that Obama was the right guy. But it was painful, and I probably consider her a better friend than she considers me.
Well, aside from you, there clearly was no love lost between the candidates or the campaigns.
That's a natural thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. Was it any more than usual? I mean, they've been all big.
I actually think if you look back at the 2008 campaign, it would seem pretty genteel. I think there were moments. There was one horrible debate in South Carolina where they just, he decided he had had enough, and I think he thought that people needed to see him fighting back, and he just unloaded on her, and she unloaded on him, and it was like a bloodbath. It was like everybody was averting their eyes.
Yeah.
But mostly it was less vitriolic than most of those campaigns because they didn't disagree on all that much. And one of the nice. I was kind of stunned when he said he wanted to make her Secretary of State because we'd gone through this. But I watched in the 2 years I was there, and they actually it was a very respectful and warm relationship. It was interesting. And when I said to him, well, how are you going to bring in someone who, now he had just read Team of Rivals, so he thought Lincoln was a good example, but he said, look, he said, I'm going to be working on the economy a lot, and I need someone who can recognizable and strong to be in to land in these foreign capitals. And he said, and I know her. She was my friend before she was my opponent, and I think if she's on the team, she'll be loyal, and she was.
I think they had a lot of common characteristics as well. And one of the great misperceptions about the Clintons is Bill Clinton is seen as this, gregarious guy who can be friends with anybody, and Hillary is more reserved, like Barack Obama in a sense, superficially. But in the reality of people who deal with him, Clinton can be a total prick, and Hillary is pretty warm, but it doesn't convey it in the public. I think the great challenge for her is to throw off her caution and allow herself to be who she is and to be spontaneous. And, I saw two Hillary Clintons in 2007 and 2008. The first Hillary was cloaked in this, straight jacket of inevitability, carried around her that like a porcelain bowl, and afraid to drop it. And then we beat her in Iowa, and she became a different candidate after that because she had nothing left to lose, and so she was not as cautious and more revealing of herself, and her vulnerabilities were clearer, and her identification with people was clearer. And I think if she is that candidate, she can be very, very formidable, but it's hard, because you have to be willing to throw off your fear and caution. And to some extent, she's been that way since college. She would write home letters to friends from Wellesley about how she could take on these very many different roles and she wasn't sure which one she was. So she's always had sort of trying to deal with, not just her hair, but her inner being in some sense. But there is an authentic one there.
I thought, by the way, I identify because I have lots of concerns about my hair too. But I thought that the most revealing story that's been written in this campaign so far was the piece in the Times on her dad and her relationship with her dad. And I think it seemed like he was kind of a rough customer.
Very rough.
Very tough on her. Yeah. But that's what I mean about these races, eventually people find out who you are. It's very hard to, especially if you go the distance.
That's true. My description of Bill Clinton has always been he's the best authentic phony I've ever met, because he was always in the moment of what he was, but none of those was really quite him.
Well, George Burns said all you need to make it in show business is sincerity, and if you can fake that, you got it made.